Hey everybody, it's Steve Richard. Welcome to the webinar here. I'm gonna start sharing my screen and we will get it started in about 60 seconds. Bear with us. Angela, that coming through okay? Can you see that title slide?
Yes, it is.
Very good, thank you. And also seeing if you can see participants, attendees coming in. There you go. I see them now about 58 and flowing in very quickly. All right, so with that, I'm going to get started. Everyone, welcome to this webinar, Operationalizing an Effective Sales Coaching Program. You know, sales coaching is that thing that everybody means to do, and then something always gets in the way. You know, isn't that just the way it is? I hear that again and again and again, because let's be honest, if you have a fire with a customer, if you have something going on with a contract, if you have to review existing opportunities, if you have an internal meeting, training, really almost everything else, it seems like a one-on-one will really eclipse sales coaching. And one-on-one, of course, is a form of sales coaching. But really what we're talking about here is like, if we can operationalize coaching and make it so it's a rhythm, so it becomes a habit in your leadership team, it does transformative things. So as we go through these slides, if you would please go on a chat and do a favor, just go onto the chat right now and just, if you have a question, a comment, why did you join this? Just pop it right into the chat just so we have it there. We can get a running dialogue going on the chat. I think everybody can see everybody else's chats. And then we'll also do that for you know, when it comes time for Q&A. I saw a hand go up, but do a favor, because I can't answer every hand that goes up. Just put it right in the chat there. And we'll start, you know, having a little dialogue. Samantha made me, Mike said, that's funny. I like that. That's good. All right. So why are we doing this? Everyone wants to achieve rep behavior change. People change is tough. Like, let's be honest. It's not easy to get people to do different things and change their own habits and the things that they do. I'll give you a funny example. I was at a bar in Western New York, socially distanced in the Buffalo area this past weekend. And I watched as these people who are, you know, kind of blue collar folks were just pumping $20 bill after $20 bill after $20 bill into this little lottery machine, state of New York lottery machine. And then it was kind of like a scratch off, but it was like perforated. And I watched them they did this over and over and over. And finally someone won $150, but they must've spent at least $250 to win that 150. And they were all excited about it. And then they took the winnings and they poured it right back in. And you're just like, oh my God. But that had become such a, almost like a ritual for these people that they just couldn't break that cycle. So we know that, you know, Kevin Dorsey, great quote here, coaching drives 30 to 40% increases without increasing headcount, without adding headcount. The recipe, hire more salespeople, will get more revenue, is not always the case. Sometimes that's the case if you have enough lead coverage, if your offering is hot enough in the marketplace and all of that, then yeah, you add more headcount, you're going to get more revenue. But for a lot of us, that's not the case at all. And in fact, adding more headcount, all it does is add cost. Customer acquisition costs go up, but the revenue doesn't go up proportionally. So I would always rather get more productivity out of existing people. And this is supported by Corporate Executive Board, Gartner, many other advisory organizations that do research on these things. All know that. So, and by the way, everyone, thank you for all the chats coming in. I see a lot of good stuff.
And Steve, do you have one clarifying question?
Yeah.
Operationalization equals measurement. Is that correct?
That's a great question. Yes, that's part of the model. We're going to get to the model, and you're exactly right. How do you operationalize something you can't measure? There you go. Crickets, you can't. Then again, nobody can talk, but it's impossible to do it. So yes, we have to have measurement as be part of it. Let's start with the fundamental objective. We're going to get to measurement. The fundamental objective is burn fewer coaching calories to create a better business impact. Okay. I want to stop there for a second. There is no trophy for I did the most coaching. If you did the most coaching and then the revenue productivity metrics go down, if it's SDRs, BDRs, maybe appointments go down, opportunity creation goes down, sales accepted leads, SALs go down, SQOs, sales qualified opportunities. Everybody's got a different acronym, means the same shit in a different way. Who are we fooling? But if those things go down, or if ultimately sales don't increase, why are we doing it? It's just a waste of effort. So it's not about how much, it's about how effective it is relative to the calories burned. I want to burn as few calories as possible and have a bigger business impact. That's how you scale. That's how you scale. So good cut it, Angela. Keep doing that when you see that, when you see those comments. So why is coaching hard? I mean, I'll tell you what, coaching's damn hard. It really is. Good coaching is damn hard. And there's a part of that relates to, people don't really know how to do it effectively. And I saw a lot of people chime in and say, hey, I'm a new manager. Thank you. Welcome for being here. All the things that helped you become a great rep are not going to be the things necessarily that'll help you be a great manager. You'll draw on them, but ultimately a lot of the best managers were never great reps themselves. I'd rather have a great rep that's also a great manager. That would be the better thing because you've been in those shoes, you know how to do it. But we know that. We see that in sports too. It's not the best players who become the greatest coaches. If you don't have a way of observing coachable moments, if you don't have a mechanism for holding accountability, there's a key word there. If I want consistency, I have to have accountability, including measurement. If I don't have a way of seeing and holding accountability, how am I going to drive consistency? And, just think about a factory as an example. I just bought solar panels for the house. I'm really excited about, we're going to get solar. That factory they're operating with Six Sigma principles, which basically says they have a very, very high degree of success of producing a viable solar panel. And if it's in the rare case, 1 in 1,000, when it's not, they have a way of identifying that and getting rid of it. They've got this in manufacturing. We need that in sales. And I think it really all starts for having a plan to teach managers how to coach. How do you have consistency unless you have a plan for how to get people to coach and do it the right way? All managers mean to coach, but something gets in the way. Operationalize the coaching. How do we go about doing it? Well, here's the first one. This is the first interesting. This is research from the Corporate Executive Board. They are now owned by Forrester by Gartner, excuse me. They're owned by Gartner. And what many of us, the fallacy of coaching, what many of us get wrong is we think, look at the left bell curve. We think that if we coach our A players, B players, and C players by the same amount, they're all going to get better by the same amount. Doesn't that make sense? It makes sense kind of intuitively, but wait a minute, not so fast. Because what they found when they did this research study is that the top performers get a little better. The C players really don't get any better at all. Almost all of the improvement comes from the B players. So if we can shift the middle 60%, that's going to make all the difference. And then you say, well, okay, that I get it. Stop and look at what you do and how you spend your time if you're a manager on this, or enablement, or sales ops, revenue ops. I bet you spend a lot more time with low performers. I bet you spend a lot more time talking about low performers. A lot of your calories are being burned on someone that, let's face it, it doesn't matter how much you coach them, is not going to get any better. Remember how I said in the beginning of this, I want to burn as few calories as possible to create the greatest business impact. It ain't going to happen with your C players. A lot of those people shouldn't even be there in the first place. What happens? What happens in most of our situations is we don't make decisions rationally as managers on how we spend our time. We make decisions based on where the fire is the brightest, based on the squeakiest of the wheels. And if we're hearing complaints about one of our reps, guess where we spend time? The rep they're giving us complaints about, that's the one that we're going to hear about. That's the one that we're going to focus on, lower performers. So really, we need to 9-box our reps. This is the 9-box. I like the 4-box. And what we're doing is we're putting them on a grid on how good of a rep are they in terms of activity and quality. You think about what makes a rep good. There's activity levels, they're doing the right stuff, and there's quality, they're doing it the right way. If you're doing the right stuff the right way, chances are you're going to get good results. Huzzah! That's what we're looking for. That's the x-axis. The y-axis is going to be, whether or not they're leaning in and they're willing to change. And we measure that in our system through the self-review score. That's why you see self-review score. But really what we're going for is like, are they invested in their own development? Who decides if someone's going to change? Answer, the rep. They do. I have learned this all too well with my children and my wife. They will not do things differently unless they want to do things differently. People value more what they conclude for themselves than what they're told. So instead, where should we focus? We love focusing on our A players in the upper right box and those stars. We love it. But the reality is we're not going to get a whole lot of bang for our buck. And really, we should be spending more time with them on different types of things. Now, we're not just talking call coaching. We're talking across the board. I want to be looking at their professional development. I want to be looking at their career path for those people in the upper right. Hit the wrong button here. And really, if you look at the lower left, we shouldn't be wasting our time with them at all. That's just, bad use of time. Peer coaching is a great way to handle that, by the way, because if you have someone who wants to become a manager someday and they're willing to make an investment in time, let's pair them with the C people. See if they can break through if you have not, but don't waste your time. And then really you want to focus all of your effort on the coaching zone, which is the upper left of the skill will matrix. If you're not familiar with this Google skill will matrix, it's very easy to see. You can do this. You don't need software. It makes it a lot easier, but you don't need software. You can do this on your own on pen and paper. All right, so now whoever asked that question about measurement, here is the model. Let's talk about the here's going to be a mouthful for you. The coaching operationalization model. We're going to have to come up with, Angela, something better than that. That's too much. You get what I'm saying. How do I make coaching work? How do I make it stick? Here's the model. Number one, we have to understand our sales methodology and our coaching framework, including what roles do we have in the company? I just talked to a company a couple minutes ago. They have K through 12, they got higher ed, and they said, boy, are those different. Like the way that these schools buy, if you're higher ed versus K-12 is like totally different. So they have different sales processes. They have different methodologies for each of those different call types. Then you got to align on what good looks like for those different call types. Leverage different coaching modalities. We'll get into what that means in a little bit to address existing skills gaps. And really where the rubber meets the road is the coaching plans. We need to have a plan, and we need to have a plan that everyone agrees to and that it works, it sticks. People are doing it when you as a leader are not around. That's the key. If the leader is not around and it's happening, you got it. If not, change it until you get it. That's where we're monitoring, measuring, doing all those kinds of things you see right here. And then finally, guess what? You're going to learn a lot because there's a ton of visibility when you operationalize coaching. And as you learn things, you will have to make changes to who's in the organization and what roles. Go back right to Jim Collins, good to great, right butts and right seats. And you will find in many cases you have maybe the job designed incorrectly, or you have the wrong kind of DNA aligned to the job. And if that's the case, I don't care how much coaching there is, it ain't going to work. I've worked with companies that have inbound call centers and they try to turn them into outbound hunters. I don't care what you do. I don't care what the comp plan is. I don't care how much coaching you have. It is not going to work. Or if it does, it'll only work for 20% of the people, something like that. So first step, we are going to document our methodology and coaching framework. Okay, so we're in this part of the model. Here is how you do it. And I'm going to give you the questions. By the way, these slides will be available later. I encourage you to get the slides. I encourage you to go through these exercises. And oh, by the way, if you need my help, I will help you do this, and not in some bait and switch. I will help you do this and not as part of a sales call. So if you need help, I'll show you my contact information at the end. It'll be in the slides. So here's my pet peeve. My pet peeve is these sales thought leader talking head people like me that paint everything in the same color, like everything is white. It's like, oh, no, this is what I did in Salesforce.com when I was an employee back in 2003, so it's going to work for you. That is a bunch of baloney. What you should do, your selling motion depends on what you sell and who you sell to. What you sell and who you sell to. One of our customers is a company that's a distributor. They're a distributor. They sell their own and other manufactured goods. They sell them to fleets. Okay, they're probably on here right now. Shout out to them. The idea of having like an SDR, BDR for their organization just doesn't make as much sense. The idea of splitting hunting and farming in their organization just doesn't make as much sense. They hunt and farm their territories because of what they sell and who they sell to. There's a tremendous amount of advantage to that. So we got to understand our roles, our call types, And then what are the fewest behaviors your top reps do consistently? The fewest behaviors. And this is the idea. If you try to get someone to change 15 things, how many things will she change? Someone put it in the, not a rhetorical question, put it in the chat. If I try to get my rep to change 50, there you go. Most of them are saying 0. Some of them said 1. Okay. Not a lot. Don't waste your time. People get confused. Think about if you took a piano lesson or a golf lesson or a dance lesson or any number of different things. If you've got a good instructor, they'll work on one thing, you'll get it right. Then they go to the next thing, you get it right. It makes an enormous difference. So here's how this looks. We start with the role, the function, sales development here. Thank you, by the way, everyone for chatting in. Thank you, Gold Stars. Thanks for participating. We've got account executives, we've got SDRs. This is kind of a very common, we see this, selling roles like this all the time. And then if we think about that, we need to understand the metrics. What are the success metrics? And when I say success metrics, I'm talking about leading indicators and lagging indicators. Leading indicators tell us what's going to happen tomorrow. Lagging indicators tell us what happened yesterday. Okay, so for an account executive, their ultimate goal is to close deals. But measuring closed deals is telling you what happened yesterday. It's not telling you what's going to happen in the future. The initial discovery meetings that they're doing, or the fact that they have completed demos, if that's your rhythm, those things are leading indicators of success. They're going to tell you, if I got enough meetings and demos, chances are if I got a 60-day sales cycle, in 45 days, we're going to close more deals because predictably a certain percentage of them close. Sales development, calls, dials, emails, social media messages, all those things are leading indicators. They're activity metrics. We can directly control them. There's a great book, by the way, called Cracking the Sales Management Code, if you haven't read it. Cracking the Sales Management Code by Jason Jordan and Michelle Vazana. They're in the DC area, not too far from me. He's a professor at UVA. She's in Leesburg. Awesome. They look at all these sales metrics, 206 sales metrics. They break them down into buckets. So they taxonomize them, like what are the activity metrics, what are the results metrics, and then one that's in the middle, they call them objectives. And a perfect example of an objective, a results metric, I can't wave a magic wand and make it better. I can't just say, hey, I want to win more deals. Hey, we won more deals. Great. But activities I can directly control. For sales development, I can directly control how many phone calls they make. You can control that and who they call. So they're calling the right people. What I can't directly control, I can sort of control. This is what they call objectives, are the number of conversations. So this is a great example of the sort of metric that you really want to make sure that you have on your radar, because if you're a pilot, there are like 5 gauges that'll keep you alive. What are you going to have on those gauges? What are going to be those things that you're going to have? You're always going to have your eye on it. You're always going to be looking out of the corner of your eye. One of those ones in sales development that should be on that list is the number of conversations. And that's defined as essentially a meaningful interaction with the prospect. That meaningful interaction could be over email with 2 round trips. We call 2 round trips over email or social. We call that a conversation. Or the fact that you get that person on the phone and engage, and they actually have a little quick call with you in the context of a cold call. So we need to know the metrics associated with those, and that cascades the types of calls. That's how we know our call types. And then we break down. So for example, an SDR very well might have an account profiling call. That's a call that they make prior to talking to the prospect just to see if the company's a good fit. Maybe they call the sales line or the switchboard to gather information. Then they might have an outbound cold call for the purpose of getting the prospect on the phone to try to book a meeting or get them to attend a webinar or a roundtable or something. But they also might get inbound leads. So inbound lead qualification is a little different because marketing's done some of the work. So they're going to probably ask more detailed qualification questions earlier on. Each of those call types, those are 3 call types, they're a little bit different. They're all a little bit different with different behaviors associated with it, which takes us to the next point here, where we need to align on what good looks like. We need to align on what good looks like. What are those fewest behaviors that have the biggest impact? Almost all call types will have some kind of an opening or how they start the call. But again, if you're an account executive or if you have a scheduled call, the call opening will sound very different than if it's an unscheduled, unexpected cold call or warm call. So let's get those things figured out, for when it's scheduled, unscheduled for those different call types. Almost always there's going to be closing for some sort of next steps, but the next steps you're closing for are, again, quite different. So here's the exercise. If you want to grab a screenshot of this, I strongly urge you to do this. Strongly urge you. So write down your call types. Sorry, first of all, write down your roles. So you're selling roles like you saw before, and the call types for each role. And then what are the key behaviors for each of those call types? Start each of the behaviors with, does the rep blank? So does the rep inquire, if it's qualification, does the rep inquire about the number of salespeople they have on their team and the technologies that they use, for example? Or does the rep confidently ask for the appointment? Those kinds of things. And we're looking at rep behavior, not buyer behavior, because the rep could do everything absolutely perfect, like absolutely beautifully. But if that rep behavior, if the buyer doesn't react the right way to that rep behavior, it's not really the rep's fault. So that's why we want to make it based on the rep behavior. What are the fewest and easiest behavior changes that have the biggest impact? That's the key. That's the key. And there's tribal knowledge in every organization. I want to go to your reps, go to 3, 5, 10 of your reps at random and just ask them, what do you call this? Because this that you say, we call that, we're Sandler people, we call that the pain funnel. Okay, pain funnel. Good. Does the rep ask the questions in the pain funnel? And then I go to a rep and I go, hey, what's the pain funnel? And they're like, pain what? What are you talking about? I go to another rep. Hey, what's the pain funnel? I don't know what you're talking about. Go to another rep. What's the pain funnel? I don't know. So even though you drank the Sandler Kool-Aid, if they didn't, they don't know what you're talking about. And they might have a completely different, what I call cult-like language. It's like the tribal knowledge. And they might call that something entirely different. Oh, we call that deep discovery here. Okay. We call that pain qualification. All right. Whatever it is, you got to make it align with what they actually know. Otherwise it's useless. And this is what comes out of it. Can you calibrate on what good is? So here's an example of me and this guy named Nat. He was one of our reps at the time. And he and I are scoring that call almost exactly the same. By the way, you don't need a call. You can do this without call recordings if there are any concerns around that. We'll get to that later on. But this is how we can be completely calibrated and aligned on what good looks like. Here's another example that's awesome. You can see Rich is the rep. Scott is our chief revenue officer. Here I am as one of the company founders. We're scoring the thing the same way. There is self-awareness. That's something you want to write down for your notes. Are our reps self-aware? If the answer is yes, you will have to burn way fewer calories than if the answer is no. And I can give you a real example. I went skiing one time with a guy named Keenan. We're going to talk about Keenan's coaching model here in a minute. And he watched me ski moguls. And I'm a pretty good skier, but I'm not at his level. I can ski everything on the mountain, but in particular, I'm not great at moguls. And he watched me ski moguls and he said, Richards, do you know what you're doing? No, I had no idea. And then he told me, this is what you're doing. Oh, totally changed everything because I couldn't see myself. I never saw myself do it. So he described something that I was like, I am really? That's what I'm doing? I didn't know that. So even in that case, he didn't take any videotape. It would have been better, but we didn't have a video set up. He didn't pull his phone out. So Ashley asked, what do we do when the rep isn't self-aware? And the answer is you need to train them. It's the difference between training and coaching. Training is teaching someone something new, and then coaching is getting them to do it. And then Ashley, I already know the follow-up. You're like, but wait a minute, but we already trained that person. Train that person again. And if they still can't get it, have them go and listen to, observe somebody who's doing it the right way. If that doesn't make them self-aware, you know what unfortunately the reality is? Sometimes reps never become self-aware. They're the kinds of people who, no matter how hard you look at it, they can't figure it out. Have them listen to one of their own calls, see if they can figure it out. If they're not self-aware after listening to a bunch of examples, after being trained extensively, guess what you have on your hands? Sorry to break it to you, but someone who might not be coachable. So they might not be able to figure it out. Now, if they're hitting their numbers and they don't know why they're hitting their numbers and they're not really aligned with your definition of good, but they're hitting their numbers, you might want to just say, quarantine them over here. When everybody goes back to the office, you might not want to invite them to join because people will pick up weird, bad habits from that person. But if they're not hitting their numbers, I think you have your answer. If you can't coach them and there's no way of helping them to become self-aware, you've tried different methods and they're not becoming self-aware. Another thing you could try is a peer coaching method. Try to get a peer coach to work with that person. You have your answer. So I hope does that help, Ashley? Flash me something to say that's good, or if not, give me a follow-up, okay? I like these things when we're in person better. There we go. She said, yes, that's good. So when we say coaching, this is really tricky. The word coaching, I'm going to give you something I learned from Miller Hyman. Miller Hyman talks about green words. Green words. What is a green word? When I say the word green, and actually I'm going to have you do it right now. Everyone do this. Go in the chat. When I say the word green, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Put it in the chat. Go ahead. Green. Green, green, green. A lot of money. Grass, leaves, inexperienced, dollar bill, trees, on target, money, good, discovery, green, life, new, all sorts of fun things being said there. Good. Emerald City, the Wizard of Oz. That's funny, JK. I like that. Go, green, go, like stoplight. Okay. It was funny. I haven't inexperienced. I think of that too in many cases. Don Green, my last name. You got us, Don. You nailed that one. Other things that weren't said. Seasick. St. Patrick's Day. We just had it. I mean, green can mean 1,000 different things to 1,000 different people. Environmentalism. So when we say coaching, a lot of people, when you say coaching, they're thinking opportunity review. And then other people, when you're saying coaching, they think, now again, this is the old world, but they think, I'm going to do a ride along with my field rep, or maybe there's going to be some flyby coaching at the water cooler. That's like giving advice maybe on a deal, or giving advice on a territory strategy or something. So the manager might, hey, I'm coaching. But the other person's like, that's not coaching. So there's a pretty big gap. There's a research study we did where there's a huge gap in the perception of the different types of coaching. Now, I'm going to give you the coaching modalities or coaching types, the types of coaching meetings you'll have. One of the biggest problems we see in operationalizing coaching in companies is people turn this into a big mishmash soup. So there's like one meeting that happens with the manager and the rep, and they try to cover all of these different things. There's no really clear agenda for it. And there's no consistency or rhythm in how frequently these things happen. And if that sounds familiar, there's no need for you to chat in. You can just admit it. I'll admit it. It's human. It's tough. Like I said, coaching's tough until you have a way of operationalizing, and then it becomes a hell of a lot easier because, the framework is telling you what to do as a coach if you might forget. So call skill development, we're probably going to do that one in small groups or one-on-ones. And we're probably going to do that weekly. Most people have that rhythm at least weekly, maybe twice a week, something like that. But then if you look at something like reviewing activity metrics and where are we on metrics, and then, or maybe if it's a closing role and it's like a pipeline review, that'll probably happen weekly in one-on-ones, or maybe every other week in one-on-ones. That's a different kind of meeting. We're not focusing on the skills that are happening in calls and emails at that point. We're focusing on specific opportunities, or we're focusing on very specific metrics and what those metrics are telling us about where is an area of focus for this rep to improve their performance. If we think about number 3 there on that row, personal development and growth, I'm not talking about people's personal development and growth probably every week. That would be bizarre. I mean, you know what I mean? But maybe every 6 weeks, every 2 months, every quarter, it depends. Everyone's different. But this is where you're saying like, hey, where do you think, you are now in your career? Where do you want to go? That kind of thing. How do we get you there? Career planning and career pathing and succession management, all those good things. Helping get your replacement up to speed so you can take the next great job, introducing you to other people in the organization. Territory and business planning. We're probably doing a QBR rhythm quarterly. It's built into the title, QBR, Quarterly Business Review. And this is the idea of like make every sales rep the CEO of their own territory. In order to do that, we have to have a rhythm of QBRs. Otherwise, they will lose focus and on a more macro level. And then, of course, there's performance reviews. Now, I know the model of annual performance reviews are pretty much shot these days. Still, there's some companies that do it like that. It's more formal. It's driven by HR. But here's the idea. All of these are different types of meetings to help improve the rep. We don't typically think of a performance review as a coaching session, but in many ways, it's part of the game plan for how do we get the reps to be as good as. Oh, can you hear me? Angela, you there?
I'm here and I can hear you, Steve. You did freeze up for a minute, but you're back.
They are doing some work in my neighborhood, and it has just been an absolute laugh riot today. It's been the power went out before when I was opening the garage door for my daughter to get the bounce house out, and the door gets halfway open and it just stops. I thought it was jammed. All right, as long as we're still good, let's proceed. Here's my buddy Keenan. And actually, Angela, while I got you, anything coming in the chat that from before that was relevant or anything meaningful?
Nope, you covered it. Ashley was the last one to ask a question. You beat me to the punch.
Cool. Okay. So, Jeff, if you need more reliable internet, I know a guy. I'll tell you what, actually, our Verizon Fios is quite good here. But Jeff, I think I know what you do. And for sure, on that network, that'd be a good thing. So observe, describe, prescribe. This is my favorite coaching model. I'm going to give you two here. There are lots. This is an important point. Pick a coaching model. I don't care what it is. It really doesn't matter to me. You have to have one, and you have to be consistent with one. Why? Because here's one. One is observe, describe, prescribe. Here's another one, grow. Okay, so there's grow. There's observe, describe, prescribe. But if you have some managers doing one and other managers doing the other, what do we have? By definition, inconsistency. Inconsistency. And we have to have consistency. If you don't have consistency in the coaching model, you will not have consistency in the coaching. If you don't have consistency in the coaching, you will not have consistency in the rep. And Ian wrote A/B test. Man, Ian, I would love that. I've never seen anybody even offer that. So we'll take you up on that all day long. If you can run some kind of an A/B test, that'd be super cool.
And Steve, you have another question from Lauren. She said, what are the types of coaching areas for peer coaching? Can tenured reps help with the business planning quarterly?
Let's go back to that for a minute. QBRs are typically not going to be something that I would recommend having a peer lead as in the form of peer coaching. Call skill development, yes. But again, make it be probably more for the C players or maybe some of the B players, but really it's your job for the higher B players or the people who you're onboarding and training. Something like activity metrics and pipeline. Yes, you can leverage peer. There's territory and business planning, depending on the strength of the peer coach. Yes, you could. Personal development and growth, it's kind of inappropriate. You know what I mean? You're kind of saying like, hey, here's another player like you talking about personal development and growth. In some situations, it could work. I mean, I don't know. I'm going to go use Derek Jeter as an example, the old shortstop for the New York Yankees. He was so admired at that point. He was essentially viewed as being like another coach. Having Derek Jeter mentor you, yeah, that makes sense. But in reality, in many cases, it's going to be kind of inappropriate for them to talk about like, your career path and the holes in your skills and games. So I would start with the call coaching as being a great one. And this is where this model, this observe, describe, prescribe comes in. So we observe, suspend judgment, do not judge, describe what you see, and then prescribe a path forward. There's two ways to prescribe. One is coaching by telling, and the other one is Socratic coaching. Coaching by telling, you know how you have some of those reps that are just like, just tell me. Lauren, just tell me what to do. Great. We're going to do coaching by telling. That's fine. More often than not, about 2/3 of the time, and it should really be your default, it's Socratic. What did you hear happen here? How would you change this next time? We'll go into the overall framework in a moment so you can see how it fits in. Okay. And then see if they're blind, if they're not self-aware, if they can't self-correct, then you step in and say, here's my observation. I observed blank, blank, blank. Again, tell them what happened Don't tell them what didn't happen. That's the mistake people make in coaching. They mean to say, hey, you didn't ask any discover questions. Well, that's what they didn't do. What did they do? Well, you started pitching product. So Frank, I'm listening to this. What do you hear here? I talked a lot. Yeah. What did you talk a lot about? Product. Yeah, that's my observation too. You talked about product. Great. What would you, now that you're hearing this, what would you do differently? Geez, I probably should have asked questions. Good. What kind of questions would you have asked? See what I mean? Socratic. GROW framework. GROW is an acronym. It stands for goal, reality, options, way forward. Okay. GROW, reality, options, way forward. I think Natalie chimed in here. Angela, I'll just take this. Advice on transitioning certain reps from wanting or preferring telling coaching into Socratic coaching. Don't fight it, Natalie. Don't fight it. Don't fight it. If you've got someone it's called a show and tell learner, a show and tell, and I'm actually one of those. A show and tell learner is the kind of one that's like, I just need to see somebody do it a few times. I'm going to ask a bunch of questions. I'll even say, cut the Socratic bullshit. I just want to no, just tell me what to do. And then I go and do it as close as I can, and I can pick it up pretty quick. I don't want that. So it's not like Socratic is better. It's just what that individual needs for their learning style and approach. Again, about a third of people are going to be coached by tell, maybe even a little less than that. And then the rest of them are going to be coaching through being Socratic. Okay. And you're going to see this on this GROW framework. There's a lot of questions here. If you leverage something like this GROW framework with me, and back, this is part of the reason why I'm not good at big companies, because they do this kind of stuff. For me, it makes me want to lose my mind. I'm like, give me a break. Can we just have a real conversation? But for most people, this is going to be a lot more effective because people value more what they conclude for themselves than what they're told. They value more what they conclude for themselves than what they're told. And I believe this is from Inside Out Coaching, if I know correctly. I think that's the logo that's here. I want to give credit where credit's due. This is something that I saw at one of our customers a few years back, and just a lot of our other customers use it as well. Okay. And now Carlos chimed in and said, coaching by telling is not coaching, it's teaching. Carlos, you're right. In many cases, it's training. Training is teaching someone something new. And in many cases, that is teaching, that is training. Now, here's what I'm going to say the slight difference is. If you've already trained them, if that rep's been trained, so let's say I'm your rep and I like the coaching by telling. If you've trained me and I still don't do it the right way, I do need you to coach me by telling me, hey, Steve, see what you just did there? Okay, do it this way instead. Remember, that's how it's supposed to be done. Oh, that's right. I forgot. Good stuff. And I saw Andres asked, any interesting books to read about sales, coaching, and training? Whew. There are a lot of them. Actually, one of them is the Linda Richardson sales coaching book is a good one. I'm actually going to pose that to the audience here. I've got a bunch of those recommendations, but I want to see what other people say. I know that Mike Weinberg has a really good coaching book. I can't remember what it's called. The 1 Minute Sales Manager is a great one. Coaching salespeople into sales champions by Keith Rosenberg, I think his name is very good. Keith Rosen, coaching salespeople into sales champions. Culture Code. I guess it's not specific to coaching, but that's good. That just got chimed in. We'll give you a link here. Good question, Andres. Thank you. So now we're going to develop coaching plans. We've defined the roles. We've defined what good is. We've got our tribal knowledge baked into it. We know the different types of rep interactions we're going to have, AKA the coaching meeting types that we're going to have, because every coaching meeting type is different. Don just chimed in, you win in the locker room first. I have not heard of that. That's a good one. We should probably get all these jotted down somehow, Angela, and maybe make a blog out of it. That's a really good question.
Oh, yeah. Great idea.
Yeah.
I can take that as an action item.
Beautiful. Love it. All right. So here's the behavior change process. Remember something, this one's amazing. We've probably heard that term neuroplasticity. There's that Luminosity company, and they talk about neuroplasticity. That's a fancy word of basically saying how adaptable and flexible is our brain. Our brains are literally changing when we're learning something new and mastering it. So the ability to do that changes over time. And this is the reason why my kids picked up skiing really fast. I mean, they're all over the mountain now, even though they're 5, 7, 9, and 11. And my wife, who is not 5, 7, 9, or 11, is really struggling with it and can't ski as well as any of the kids at this point, which is true. So why is that? Because their brains are wired when they're younger, and ours were when we were younger. So there's a higher degree of neuroplasticity. So we can essentially rewire the neural pathways in our brain by doing a new thing. And if you think this is some hocus pocus, there was a fascinating article in Newsweek about this, about London cab drivers. So there was research about London cab drivers that they, and this is before the real prevalence of GPS. GPS was just kind of becoming popular. Cab drivers have been in London where the streets are notoriously difficult, way worse than Manhattan because it's not a grid. The part of their brain responsible for geospatial reasoning, they put them in MRIs, was 17% bigger than cab drivers that never learn the roads that just use GPS. So huge difference in terms of literally the size of that part of the brain that's responsible for that. How does that happen? Well, this is basically what happened. Same with the London cab drivers. They would, they'd have to go learn, back then, look at a map, learn the streets, go take someone some way, learn what to do, not to do, one ways, all those kinds of issues, bus lanes. There's a lot of tricky stuff in London. Also places you can drive into and not, places that have surcharges if you drive in there, where your essentially easy pass is going to get charged a lot of money. So it's tough. So let's translate that to reps. You're going to, number one, if we can, get the rep to self-assess. Number two, focus on 1 or 2 topics. We said why. 3, role play praise. 4, track progress. And 5, repeat. We've already said this. The rep decides they're going to change their behavior. Okay. And we get them to self-assess. If they cannot self-assess, we've talked about what to do. All right. Now, we already talked about this. We're going to focus on 1 or 2 things at a time. Don't focus on too much. By the way, it very well might be that if you look in the metrics and that kind of thing, that the thing to focus on is not the call itself. They might perform the call fine. So let's say you oversee a team of sales development reps, BDRs. And let's say that team, there's this one person in that team whose numbers aren't great. The results are not great. They're not hitting their variable comp. But along the way, they're just not having enough conversations. When they do have conversations over email or whatever, they convert them quite well, but they're not having enough conversations. You know what you should do? Don't look at the conversation. Do something else. Go look at the rest of their process. Go look at how are they figuring out who to contact in the first place? What leads are they working off of? What lead lists are they working off of? Maybe they're missing something marketing is handing them, or maybe they really don't understand your ideal customer profile, or they don't understand the right personas. So it can be something completely different that has nothing to do with the call, but the key is focus on 1 or 2 things at a time. Role play and praise. Ideally we're going to role play it, or we're going to set them up with, okay, before the next session, I'd like to see you do this. Now there's an interesting lesson about cortisol as a stress hormone. And when cortisol is injected into the brain, it triggers fight or flight. So we want to avoid stress. We want to create a safe place for learning and teaching and coaching and all that kind of stuff. That's a very, very important part of this. If you don't have the right culture, if you have kind of a culture of blame or those sorts of things, then none of this is probably going to work because fight or flight will get triggered. And this is where we track progress over time. You need to have some way of tracking progress. Now, we might be tracking progress on a scale of 1 to 5. 0 is that behavior, that skill was not attempted. That area of focus was ignored. 5 was that was unbelievable. Now, maybe this is in the context of a call, like asking discovery questions, or maybe this is in the context of you did an awesome job organizing your territory. So on a scale of 0 to 5 or 0, you don't even try doing it. 1 is we'll give you some points for trying, and 5 is the Mona Lisa. We're going to give you a 4. That's how we track those things. So it's quite easy to do, again, if it's operationalized, but you have to have a measurement system. Speaking of measurement system. So monitoring coaching effectiveness is critical. It's critical to the narrative that we had in the beginning on, I want to do less work and get better results. Here's an example of what we're talking about here. If you look at the box on the left, managerial strain. right? The whole idea of the manager has to do all the work. And actually, even it says rep sends recording to manager. What I see in many cases is the manager has to find the recording in the first place from some big pile. Well, this is just total bad use of time all around. And it can take a lot of time just to do the administration of the coaching. Forget about coaching. Like the administration of the coaching takes a lot longer than the coaching itself. Versus if we get some buy-in and rep accountability into their own development, that's key. Now that also begs the question, what do you do if the reps don't buy in? What do you do if the reps don't buy in? I'm gonna pose that to you. Guys, go ahead and chime in here over chat. What do you do when the reps don't buy in? So if you've got a rep that does not buy into coaching, does not buy into getting better, what do you do? That's a reality we all face. What do you do? Yes, and Darren, you are absolutely able to have this deck. Yes, yes. Here we go. Jeff chimed in. Have to learn what motivates them and find a way to tie the what's in it for them. Pivot strategy, I saw that. Ask what their goals are. All right. If you have it, show them that they're stagnant. Use visual information. Try to understand what's behind that behavior. Sure, these are all really good answers. Really good answers. Okay. Here's another one. Hang on, where is it? Actually, you could probably scroll through it better than I can, Angela. Any others I did not? I think there's a couple I missed there.
Yeah, let's see. We have allow them to give their why. Oh, now it's disappearing. Hold on. Allow them to give their why and be open to their feedback, and then try to talk about other reps' successes. Look at the data.
Yep. David, offer them the chance to wear a blue visor with a big M and flip burgers and probably get COVID too. Yeah. Show Sander, show the risk of no improvement and benefit of improvement. All valid. I love it. Great answers. Great answers. You got to get people to buy in with their heart. Data for the head, stories for the heart. You know what I mean? So in every one of those answers, I saw data and stories. Data for the brain, stories for the heart. It's like counterinsurgency. When we tried to win in Afghanistan, we realized if we just bomb the hell out of them, guess what? They don't like us. Who would have thought? So instead, we went back to those tribal elders with big bags of money, and we walked around with a bunch of candy, and we won hearts and minds and basically had tea with all these people all over the place. I wasn't in it, but I know people who were, and they've said that's basically what we did. That's how we changed, and we had a much better result that way. Hopefully it holds. So share your vision, Max says. All right. All those things are great. I'll give you one more that was not said, and everything's right. Do all that. Tie it. Here's what you can't do. You can't take something away. You can't take something away, especially if they're doing okay or doing reasonably well, unless you're going to let them go, let him or her go. Instead, tie it to career path. If you in this organization, we have a culture of Kaizen or continuous improvement. I love this word, Kaizen. It's a Japanese word. It means continuous improvement, Kaizen. So, and I'm going to type it in here, Kaizen, so you can see what it is. We believe in this, right? And if you want to be promoted and move forward in your career, we need you to be on board with getting better. We're continuously getting better, all of us, including me, which means tell me what I can do better for you. And if they don't get on board with that and they still hit their numbers, quarantine them. I go back to that, quarantine, or let them go. Sometimes I find that an organization that lets go of a top performer that's a pain in the neck and brings everybody else down, you let go of that low performer, and all of a sudden everybody else's numbers go up 30%. Addition by subtraction, it's just the truth. And speaking, David wrote in, been there, done that, and it worked. And let me draw a distinction. There's a huge distinction between the rep that is undermining what you're trying to build and create, and they still are a high performer, versus the rep that's a high performer but just kind of keeps to themselves, him or herself. In most cases, the ones that keep to him or herself, if you want that production and performance, I get it. It's really hard to cut someone that's carrying a big chunk of your number. Quarantine them. That's why I keep going back to that. And by the way, we were talking about that way before the pandemic, versus if it's that rep that's a cancer, you know what you need to do. You got to make staffing decisions based on it. And this goes right back to that skill will. that skill will matrix and understanding when people are not a fit. That's why in this box right here, these are people who are skillful, but they don't have a whole bunch of will or desire to change. Challenge them to change, like all those things you just said, quarantine them, isolate them, or let them go. I mean, you're going to have to make some decisions on what you're going to do. We talked about that. So really, why are we doing all this? Because here is why. The benefits of the coaching culture are huge. How do we remove the barriers? If we think about a coaching culture, if we have a coaching culture and all these things are operationalized, we have a rhythm of meetings. We know what the coaching types are, the coaching meeting types are. We know who does what. We have a way of holding accountability. We're tracking that it's happening. We know what people are supposed to be doing based on your selling motion and your different call types. There's consistency in what we're looking for in behaviors and calls. We got to remove the barriers. We have to remove this black box. It's the one, I think, silver lining in sales from this coronavirus COVID pandemic insanity is once upon a time, I think we accepted the black box. And we can't anymore. I mean, I'm seeing field sales organizations where previously the idea of there being transparency, who would have thought, and visibility, so we know who's doing what and what's working and what's not. We're finally getting to a point where people are bought into that. And then you got to have that get rid of that misalignment on good. The only way to do it is define good and document. I can't emphasize this point enough. You need to document. Let's see if I can get an example of one over here. Yeah, there's one. And when you document, it looks something like this. Strongly recommend you do thick stock laminated cards. This is our sales process. I'm more than happy to share this with any of you, okay? So get it documented, because if it's documented, then it's just legends that are verbally told from generation to generation. We need to have it written down in order for it to be that consistent. And then finally, we need to remove the barrier of the reinforcement and the lack of reinforcement and the lack of accountability and the lack of visibility. So you have to have accountability. We have to know that these things are happening. Why? Because our brains are perfect for getting machines. We have two parts of our brain. We have short-term and long-term memory. And those London cab drivers that I described before, when they would drive those streets, if they learned something from driving those streets, if they didn't then reinforce that by having to drive the same route in 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, something like that, it would be lost. Our brains literally purge information from the short-term memory while we're sleeping. And then even though we might have driven that route a few weeks ago, we forgot, or we were looking at the GPS, which was our crutch. And guess what that's similar to in sales? When you as a sales manager get on there and do the call for the rep, you become their GPS. They're not learning anything. They see you do it, but they never internalize it. It never becomes part of, a habit, like tying their shoes. So they can observe it, but they can't do it after they observe it. That's what we call the insights to performance gap. We know that there are gaps in skills before. Once those skills gaps are known, how do we then close that gap? You saw the model and the framework for operationalizing the coaching model that will help you. And yeah, Jeff, love to get a copy of that laminated sales process. You got it, Jeff, coming your way. Email me, you got it. All right, you want it, you got it. Visibility, alignment, accountability. These are not new ideas, but boy, if you think about it, and if I think about my sales career, there've been a lot of times when I haven't really had a whole lot of visibility. I really had no idea when I was leading a sales team. There really wasn't very good alignment. People had different ideas. I've worked with a lot of management teams where one manager's Challenger methodology, another manager's Sandler methodology, another manager's into force management medic, another manager's solution selling. And it's like, they're all kind of saying the same stuff, but they're using different language and vocabulary, and they're all talking past each other. One person's qualifications, another person's discovery. It's just like, and you think if I'm your consultant listening to this and I'm confused, your reps are real confused. They don't even know where the target is. So we got to clean that stuff up. All right, here's my offer to you. I will help you. We will help you for nothing. Complimentary. If you're a customer, great. You already paid for it. If you're not, that's okay too. This is not some bait and switch nonsense. We can give you a baseline assessment first and foremost of where you stand with your coaching culture and with operationalizing coaching of all types within your organization. By the way, of course, many of you know Exec Vision helps with recorded call coaching. And also what we heard from our customers is a lot of our customers are like, I want the same system to work for all the other coaching that we're doing. I want to track what's happening one-on-ones. I want to track what's happening with my career pathing. I want to track what's happening when we do role playing. I want to be able to get a 360 view of the training and the coaching with that rep. And I want to have it in one place. So we help by building out parts of our technology, our software platform for that. So we got a lot of customers now where they don't even have a call recording in their Exec Vision. They're using Exec Vision, but not related to recorded calls because maybe lawyers won't let them or whatever. Although we can help you with that too. So there's my cell phone number. Please text. Angela, any other questions or comments? I see something in the Q&A, but I don't know how to get to it.
Just, they were actually answering to your question about green, what green means to them. So they're not questions, but unless anyone else has any other questions, I do not see anything additional.
And everyone, I'm seeing some chats saying, hey, please share XYZ with me. Do me this favor, just because for my own mental sanity, please, there's my cell phone, text me, or if you want, email me. If you want something that's to get sent to you, like that sales process document, we have documents on the coaching models. We've got documents on everything. You want call coaching scorecards of various types. If you write and say, hey, we've got an inbound lead qualification team. Do you guys have a scorecard? Oh yeah, we got scorecards. So whatever you need, just email me that. I'll get you the template back. And I do mean it. It's not some sort of a bait and switch where I'm here to do this to help.
Yep, and you guys will all get the replay and within a couple days, and also the slides. And Joanna gave great feedback. Steve, she said great session. Ron went genuine. Need more of this. So we will definitely.
That was nice. I like that. Ron, genuine. I'll take it all day. Thanks, Elaine. Thanks, Joanna. All right. All set, Angela. We're good?
Yep, all set.
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.